crisis of national magnitude, predators using the internet to stalk our kids and lure them into sexual encounters. Police say Joshua Threlkeld kidnapped an underage girl so he could rape her. This alleged creep supposedly contacted 80 different children on 2 continents. Then there's the self-proclaimed Dr. Evil, caught in a sex sting when he thought he was going to hook up with a 13-year-old girl. That girl turned out to be a cop. Joining me now, along with the rest of my panel, Dr. Charles Sophie, the on-call psychiatrist on the show Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, and the author of this fantastic new book, Side by Side. Dr. Sophie, we're talking cyber predators, but really, aren't they just predators who happen to use the internet? And does the internet, the anonymity of the internet, make them even more brazen than they would be otherwise?
Oh, absolutely. This is a place where you can hide, you can be sneaky, you can be dirty. Nobody catches you, they think. It's not a safe place, and parents need to understand they're in a whole nother world, and they got to start watching their children, know where they're at, know what they're doing, because they're out there all alone, and those people are out for blood.
Well, how do you approach a child? These are teenage girls often. You know teenagers love their privacy. They don't want to be treated like little children. So how does a parent approach the child when they see them typing on the internet and they're afraid, oh my God, who are you communicating with on that chat room? How do you approach effectively, doctor, so the child doesn't just say, shut up, leave me alone, and slam the door?
Right. Well, to do it effectively, I would hope that you were doing it a long time before now. It's a process you have to build on. However, if you get to a place now where you're in this fear zone that you don't know what they're typing, you're afraid to ask, you don't want to be shut down and them cut you off, then you have to understand that it has to be a collaborative, respectful conversation. You're not going to get it all done at the first discussion. You're going to be able to say, hey, I want to talk about this. I want to feel more comfortable. Help me. Let them work with you and trust your child a little bit. Give them a little bit of rope, see what they do with it, and that'll tell you what your next step should be.
But this apparently is really not what Perry Aftab of WiredSafety.org suggests. Perry, you seem to suggest use subterfuge if necessary. Get in there, get the passwords, check your child's email, which is equivalent to opening up somebody's mail. So I see 2 divergent suggestions here.
Well, not divergent at all, Jane. I was talking about at-risk teens. Teens, you know, are running away, engaging this behavior. You have to do what it takes to protect them. But I absolutely agree that you have to start early. You start with values, and the best filter is the one between our kids' ears, teaching them what to do, how to do it, and making sure they come to you when things go wrong.
How do we know who the bad guys are? You know, way too often, these are trusted people in power. Let's take accused pedophile Scott Ritter. He used to be the chief UN weapons inspector, for goodness sakes. He became famous as an outspoken critic of the Iraq War. Listen to this.
I mean, there's 2 aspects. One is the human aspect. I think anybody who holds claim to being a human would say it hurts to have people come at you that way, especially if you know what you're doing is right, fact-based, and you're doing it for the right reasons.
Ritter was busted in a sex sting last month. He allegedly masturbated in front of a webcam while chatting online with a person he thought was a 15-year-old girl, but who was really a cop. This is the Scott Ritter we now know.
Wondering if we can talk to you about some charges that have been alleged against you?
I'm sorry, will be no comment.
Is there any statement you'd like to make at all?
So Ritter remains free on bail. He has not been convicted of anything. We have to point that out. He and his attorney have an open invitation to appear on this show and tell their side of the story. That said, Judge Greg Mathis, does Ritter epitomize the dilemma of trying to figure out who's really a predator and who's the good neighbor next door?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things we've seen in this case is him masturbating on camera or by webcam and showing young ladies. And so when you have a guy like that who's already been charged in the past, I think, for one, he should have a significant bond and make it tough to release him. Number 2, I think it needs to be known that he was at least charged in the past. I know some are going to say it's unconstitutional to allow people's charges or arrests to be known without a conviction, but I think we're getting into desperate areas, and particularly a repeat arrest.
Now, there are so many sicko predators out there, and yet it often seems prosecutors waste their time and taxpayer dollars on totally ridiculous cases. Here's a perfect example of their misplaced priorities. The prosecution of sexting teens. A 12-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl in Indiana are accused of sexting each other. That means they sent each other sexy photos and or sexy messages via their cell phone. Get this, both of these kids could be charged with child exploitation and possession of child porn. They're 12 and 13. How absurd is that? Xavier Von Erck, I mean, really, is that what we should be focusing on now?
Not a prosecution in that kind of situation, because they're taking a horrible risk with their safety, but you shouldn't put them in jail over it. You shouldn't charge them. We do need to focus away from things such as that and on the fact that there are so many of these guys. It's not just one Scott Ritter here or another guy there. The biggest profession that hits on us when we go out and do our undercover thing are sadly people who have positions of power over children, teachers, coaches, people who work at daycare centers, and that's really what people need to be made aware of. Not so much stuff like a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old. Yeah.
One of the reasons that the sexting problem is a problem, and kids admit, almost half of them who've been surveyed admit they'd either sent or posted or received these sexual images, is that once the images are on the internet, they can get out anywhere. They can go viral. Next thing you know, you could have adult pervs trading these things. So that's why it's really so scary. Dr. Charles Sophie, though, the answer is not locking the kids up.
No, it is not locking the kids up. It is educating parents and giving them the power to not be afraid of their children. Turn your cell phones off. Find out their URL addresses. You have the authority and you have the ability and the right to know. Your children are not the adults. You are. Set that standard straight from the beginning, and the earlier the better.
All right, hang in, fantastic panel. We're covering this story every parent needs.